Hi, this is Liz and I am making this video for my lovely tile group who are continuing despite the circumstances and the fact we cannot meet up at the moment. Can't wait to see your quilts when we all finally can get out and meet and see them face to face. So this question has come in and it was best responded to with a video, and it was about these very small pieces. Now there's two versions of this quilt. This one is completely English paper piece. The other version has English paper piece patches sewn onto a background. This isn't one of them, but it just gives you an idea of what I'm talking about where it gets stitched on. Both of them feature these small units, and there's a couple of things that I can show you that will help when it comes to piecing it to getting these to meet nicely in the corners. So I'll just put that to one side. So I'm going to demonstrate with one of the pieces from this design. And the first thing you'll notice here is I've used an extremely small pin. So to talk a little bit about pins, I have got a selection of them here. Here we go. And the pins that I tend to use, these were just grabbed out of my box. My favourite ones are the flower head pins. I think that comes from me starting to sew when the children were small, and so if I dropped them I could find them or before they or the dog found them. I like a fine pin and I quite like a long pin. But when I stitch small pieces, I prefer applique pins. Here's a box of them here, scatter some around. And what you will notice about them is applique pins are very small. I mean, if we compare these two together, you can see the difference in the size there. And the reason why I like these is that if you look on here, you can see that I will be able to tack around this shape with no problems. If I was to use a normal pin, it's quite big, I would have to move it out the way, and also the thread can come tangled. So by using a smaller pin, it keeps the thread out the way. So the next thing to mention is a needle. I try and use the finest needle I can. I've got this one here as a little reminder that that possibly would be too long for what I'm trying to sew here. What I prefer is a finer needle. You know, we're sewing smaller things, and so I'll use this one here. And you can see it's a lot smaller, so it's going to take less of a bite of the fabric when I go through it, make a smaller hole in the fabric, and also it just reduces the scale of everything I'm sewing. So I've prepped this, I've put a knot in the end, and I'm going to tack how I would normally tack. So for some reason, I go round anti-clockwise because I'm right-handed, and I tend to start above the pin so that I can take the pin out when I get to the very end. So I fold the fabric over, move it into the middle, and I normally have the knot on the front because then when I come to taking the papers out, I can remove all the thread from the front. And then what I'm actually doing that you can't quite see is that I'm giving it a really good finger press. And if we use cotton, it should work with you to finger press it into place. When you work small, it can often be better to use a lighter weight fabric, such as a Liberty fabric. But I'm trying to do this very much how you would be working on your tile quilts. So I'm using just a standard craft weight cotton, and even the paper you will see, I don't know if you can see, it's got dots in it because I've reused it. So I'm giving it a good finger press, and I'm going towards the corner. And what I'm going to do now is fold it in. And in my fingers, I'm feeling for the edge of that paper. Sometimes people prefer to use card, particularly some of the examples I've got from the 70s and 80s have card. But for me, I find that having to tack through card can actually put too much strain on my wrists. So I prefer to use just printer paper. But if you were really struggling with this, you could think about using a slightly heavier weight paper. So then I make sure I take the needle through there, and then I've tacked it right in that corner. And then I do the same here, and I'm giving it a good press with my fingers. It's surprising how well you can actually finger press. And then I'm running along to the edge, and then I will stop again and fold this in. I'll make sure I put a stitch here. If you prefer glue basting, it's exactly the same process of working around it and making sure you give it a really nice press. So here we have the corner, and it's these corners at these angles that often cause the problems. And what we don't want to do is end up with a corner that looks like so, because then when we go to sew it together, how are we going to know where the next piece is? We need the fabric to look exactly the same size and shape as the piece of paper. So I stitch to here, turn it round, give it a good finger press. There we go. And then I'm just going to take my thread through make sure I take it through that corner, and I'm going to stitch through to the end. There we go, you can see it caught the corner of it there, so you can imagine what happens if you put a large pin in. And then I take it through to the end, and then I'm going to trim that off with a little bit of a tail. So if it comes you know, if I'm making lots of these and they start to come a little bit unravelled, I can give it a pull. And here we go. When I show you this, can you see we've now got a nice, if I can get that to focus, there we go. We've got a really nice corner there. So when we go to sew, we can see exactly where we need to stitch from end to end to make sure that that is going to meet the piece that's next to it. And that's it. Remember to remove the pin. And any other questions, remember I always start with a knot because I can cut that off, but if you prefer you don't have to. And that's how I thread baste, and I try and get my fabric as accurate to the shape as possible to help me when I sew them together to get those points to meet. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Bye.